Word. Hello and welcome everyone to our new episode of the series Conscious Conversations, which is a series of live conversations and interviews with familiar faces from the Shiatsu community, with the purpose to bring more awareness to the extraordinary Shiatsu community that we have within the UK and beyond, and at the same time to discover different things from behind the scenes, from our guest journeys, from their personal life, and some bits that they may share with us only in this series, in the Conscious Conversation series. I'm your host, Antonia. I'm the Digital Marketing Coordinator of the Shiatsu Society, and every month I am honored to have a new guest. And I am incredibly happy to introduce to you the guest for this month, which is Keith Phillips. Keith, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I would love to invite you to say hello to everyone, and then we can dive deep into our questions.
Well, hello, Antonio, and thank you so much for inviting me today. It's lovely to meet you and to be here. And of course, hello to anyone else who's listening. So a little bit about myself. Well, here I am sat in Somerset, where I practice. I practice shiatsu, and I do quite a lot of supervision now since the pandemic. I find myself in a slightly different role of supporting our graduates in sustaining and developing their practice. So that's a passion of mine, as well as the practice of shiatsu, and of course teaching it, which I've been doing since forever. Yeah.
I'm very familiar with your incredibly vast experience and the journey that you've had with developing your career in Shiatsu, and I cannot wait to dive deeper into it. Before we move forward, I just want to let all our listeners know that if you have any questions, if you want to find out more about what's happening behind the scenes, you're welcome to leave any type of questions and feedback and comments in the comment section. But now let's go a little bit deeper and tell me a little bit more about how it all started. I know it was several decades ago, so that's a very, very impressive journey. Tell me, how did you get to encounter Shiatsu and how this journey started?
Well, it all started with one day I was at a friend's house, and I had a headache, and they had another friend that was visiting, and I happened to mention that I had this headache, and he said, "Oh, I've just come back from Japan, and I've learned this thing called shiatsu. Would you like me to have a go?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I lay down on my front, as he asked, and he only worked the top of my back and my shoulders. He actually didn't touch my head. And it was 10, 15 minutes, and I got up and headache had gone. I thought, wow, this is amazing. So it piqued my interest. And I managed to get hold of a book, which maybe was the only one available then, called Shiatsu, which was by a Japanese woman called, I think, Yukiko Owen. And so I started playing around a little bit with what was there. And then I found an evening class on Doin and acupressure points, and so I enjoyed that. And then this is in 1977, and then later in the year I was given the book Do It Yourself Shiatsu by Ohashi, and by two people. And so I avidly studied that, and I basically taught myself as best I could from this book. I was at this point now had moved to Ireland, so there were no shiatsu teachers around, and I think the following year I thought, I've got to learn from a teacher. So I came over to Britain, did 2 classes, and that was it. I was sold. I've got to do this. So I ended up with my family moving back to London to study at the Kushi Institute. And I couldn't get enough, really. So that's kind of how it began. I studied at the Kushi Institute, and started practicing in the sort of latter part of 1981. But I kind of saw that my training was the next 10 years as well, with the many wonderful teachers that came over, Pauline Sasaki and Saul Goodman and Schizuko Yamamoto and others whose names I can't remember right now. It was a very rich time for learning. But I started practicing in London, moved to Bristol in 1982, and that was really it. My career had started, and it was full-time shiatsu. Yeah. So that was my starting point, really.
Impressive journey. We're talking about almost 48 years now since you've
Yeah,
encountered shiatsu. That's wonderful.
indeed.
It all started with the physical discomfort that got
Again,
eased. It all started with the physical discomfort because you've mentioned the headache and
started with the physical, yeah, that's right. But of course, it's not long before you realize it has a far bigger effect than just helping your physical body. And at that time, I was doing a lot of yoga, I was meditating, and so there was a lot of sort of how can I say, symmetry,
Mhm.
and uh, yeah. So of course, I began to see this is so far-reaching in its impact, both on me and as a receiver, but as a giver, to notice that in giving shiatsu, it's healing as well. I mean, I couldn't believe that I could do a day shiatsu and feel better at the end of the day, rather, inspired and opened and rather than, oh God, I'm tired after a hard day's work. So it was self-generating, that love of it. I just wanted to do more and more and more. And I began teaching quite early on, most really through invitation of other people who said, "Oh, I'd love to learn, could you teach me some?" And I set up, 2 or 3 workshops and what have you. And then in moving to Bristol, I ran a lot of weekends and evening courses, and it was I don't know, such a vibrant time in the 80s. People were so hungry to learn. I felt very privileged to be part of something that was very rich. And of course, peers and colleagues were in a similar place. And, before long, we were setting up schools and what have you. And it was a wonderful time.
It does sound like a wonderful time. You've mentioned earlier that there was a point where you connected with the practice itself. You were sold the practice, and from there onwards, you just knew you had to go down that path. Do you want to tell me more about that? What was it that sold it to you?
Oh, wow. Um, yeah. It's like just the doing of it was pure joy. Um, I was also very fascinated, of course, by, the understanding of the theory behind it. And although at that time there wasn't much theory, it was the way it was taught was very practical. So I actually ended up enrolling on an acupuncture course only because I wanted more theory, which is quite funny because I never thought I wanted to be an acupuncturist, even when I'd signed up on the course. So, I mean, it was a wonderful course. It actually was also very practical as well as, providing the theory because the school was run within um, a practice center. So, yeah, so that kind of got me to study, if you like, traditional Chinese medicine and the 8 principles and the 5 elements and what have you. But that was, kind of alongside the many workshops that I could go to at the Kushi Institute. Well, the East West Center where the Kushi Institute was, and a lot of public classes as well. I couldn't get enough, basically. I just devoured it. And I don't know, just opened my heart, sort of brought me into my body. I think, which was very important. I think that grounding, because I had previously studied psychology, which was kind of more mental, I guess. So to actually to use my body in a healing capacity, remains to this day a real joy of that grounding, that embodiment, which I see as the core of Shiatsu, how we relate to another is through an embodied sort of presence, as I would see it.
It sounds so inspiring to hear that shiatsu can benefit both the receiver and the giver, and
Completely.
you end up having such a honorable, such a noble profession where at the end of the day you can say, I am full of joy and bliss. And I don't think that many people can say that in the current professional environment. It is
That's
very rare.
right.
That's something that inspires me personally, and that's why I really love to hear so much about different type of journeys from the holistic background. You've mentioned the part of your life where you studied acupuncture, and I would love to find out more about that. Tell me, why is it that you've chosen shiatsu instead of acupuncture?
Okay, well, of course, as you've already shown you, shiatsu was my first love. So for me, it's all about contact and touch. And although the acupuncture was quite exciting, and I did practice it for a while alongside my acupuncture. I worked in a clinic in Reading, sorry, Oxford, where I only did acupuncture there. So it was quite nice to do that. But in truth, I like the personal contact. I like to have my hands on somebody, to feel the point through, if it's a point, for example, through my thumbs rather than a needle. So there's not quite the contact. But it was exciting. It was fun. It was effective. And it did get me to study and dive in, and it left me with an incredible knowledge of points, pressure points, which stood me in good stead for my teaching as well as my practice. But of course, acupuncture is a very different approach, and so it's important to see that difference. Really, I see shiatsu as more relational, and it's what's happening in the relationship that's important moment to moment. Now, I wouldn't say that isn't true for acupuncture per se. It probably depends on the practitioner and how they are practicing it. So there's no criticism of acupuncture. I think it's a wonderful modality. But like everything, it's what you resonate with in your heart. And, being really true to me, it was about the touch. So over time, I let it go. I no longer practice it. Though occasionally I have some.
I hear that it provided the theoretical foundation, which was not as available at the time. But at
Yes,
the
that's
same
right.
time, I hear that shiatsu is all about the connection between the giver and the receiver and the
Yeah,
relationship that gets established there. And I also hear that there's a great sense of being anchored, grounded, and connected with your body. Am I hearing that right?
absolutely. I think I would very much echo that. Um, and I think that it's important to recognize that acupuncture theory is very focused to acupuncture. And of course, when Pauline Sasaki came along, she was presenting meridian theory, which is far more, suitable to what we're doing in shiatsu. And so that was opening up a whole big, exciting journey. And you can see how Masanaga's meridian theory is rooted in the traditional Chinese medicine, if you like. But he certainly developed it in such a wonderful way that made it much more relevant to shiatsu. And but in terms of your question, you were asking about, or you're reflecting on a connection. And so to me, that is paramount. It's like when I'm working with a client, I'm not there doing something to them. I'm not there thinking, what do they need? What points would be good for them? Sort of, which would be a more mechanistic way of sort of diagnosing a problem and then kind of delivering something to fix it. It's so not that. I know when the subtitle to Ohashi's book was Acupuncture Without Needles. And I can see that's good for selling the book, but really it isn't that. It is its own thing. And if you lean into the connection aspect, is to recognize there are two people in this place. One has the role of the practitioner, the other has the role of the receiver. But essentially, you're both in the mystery of what needs to happen here. So it's so important that we're not coming from a point of view, oh, I know what you need and I will deliver it. Because we don't. We're sitting in a mystery, but there's things passing between us. There's information that we're receiving all the time from the client. A lot of it is kind of not so consciously, doesn't have to be consciously registered. So it's more through your feeling sense, that you trust your touch, you trust the nudges, the intuitions, you trust what's I would see as in the relational field. So there's a wisdom in your connection that's coming to you that you respond to. And of course, the client is as well. It's an interactive field that you're in, and it unfolds moment to moment. That's why it's so important that as practitioners, we are really connected to our body. We are open intuitively. So that means open in our hearts. And to me, I think a core here, because often in Shiatsu we talk about the hara and being grounded in your hara, and of course that's number one, that has to be, and that brings you to your body. But I would say, and of course we talk in Shiatsu about an open heart too. I love the notion of, as well as that, being so fully in all of your body. So it's the whole of your body that does the Shiatsu. And then being in the whole of your body, you are connecting to all of your feelings. And if you sort of see it as the kind of emotions that are here, we don't always, of course, we can connect emotions with the heart, but we might feel fear in our solar plexus, or anger and frustration in our necks and our shoulders. And so to me, it's very important that we're open to everything that we feel and allow that to be in the shiatsu, in the exchange, rather than, oh, I've got to protect my feelings and I must be very relaxed and at peace and what have you. I say, no, you need to be alive. You need to be a human who's alive in the exchange and welcomes all of your feelings. And then you're not kind of a protective or holding part of you back. So this is very important for me, that we, in our embodiment, we are allowing everything that we feel. And so we are authentic in that sense. We're bringing who we are to the table, to the shiatsu. We're not hiding a part of ourselves. And we will be trusted in that place, because surely anyone wants a practitioner who's honest and who is themselves.
Authentic as well. It sounds to me like there is a field of expansiveness being created, and then you have two people coming together, the giver and the receiver, and then you allow everything that happens there just to unfold in a safe and healing manner.
Absolutely. To allow everything to unfold, I think, is very important, and that you stay present in the constant change.
I did like your note when you said that all we need is to be human and to be alive in order to be present in those moments. Like that's something that will definitely stay with me. I do have a personal curiosity because you mentioned you have a background in psychology, and I've heard
Hmm.
you saying that psychology was more related to the mental plane. How do you find the connection between, or the transition maybe, between your psychological background to Shiatsu, which sounds a bit more expansive and it sounds a bit more beyond just the mental field.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mentioned studying psychology back in in the 70s, but uh, I've my interests developed hugely into depth psychology. So this is the kind of work of Carl Jung and then James Hillman, who was a student of Jung, and he developed archetypal psychology. And of course, once you get into that realm, it is including the body more. And so it isn't just a mental thing. It's includes everything that we feel. And of course it has a mythological base, which then invites our imagination. And our imagination, you can't just call mental, because in our imagination that, all artists and musicians are alive to, it does evoke feelings. And so that's important to me, the sort of the imagination. And then that's part of our shiatsu, because when we're giving shiatsu, things come in through our imagination. It could be an image of something that suddenly wakes something up in you if you allow the image. It doesn't matter what the image is, but it does evoke emotion, images, if we allow it. It's not just a mental function. So I see the sort of a holistic approach, is embodied, it's imaginal, it's feeling, it's the whole realm of what it is to be human. And so in truth, opening up to a depth psychology, if you like, has been an incredible teacher for me in shiatsu. I often say my best shiatsu teachers weren't shiatsu teachers.
Tell me more about that. What is
Yeah,
it that
well, a key, what I see is, as a shiatsu practitioner, if you've got a busy practice, which I have had, um, you need to be inspired to keep it fresh. It's very important to me to keep choosing things that keep you very alive and stop you coming stale. Now, what actually happened to me in the sort of early 90s was I went on several men's retreats. One was, well, with Michael Mead, who is a storyteller, mythologist, Robert Bly, a poet and author, and Malidoma Some, who's a Dagru tribe. He's passed away, sadly. He was a shaman from the Dagru tribe in West Africa. And also James Hillman, who I've mentioned. And doing these retreats with them just opened something massive in me. There's a lot of sort of ritual and poetry and, embodiment. And when I came back from those, I can't tell you how my shiatsu took off.
something open is it's as if
Some
you've connected with a collective consciousness and just took anything that you needed from there.
Absolutely. I would see it. I mean, it's lovely how you described it. Yes, there was a massive opening, like a sort of expansiveness. But I think what was most relevant was the deepening. It was a depth, it was a deep dive. Often in spirituality, we think in terms of expansiveness and opening, more the transcendent. But this is very much the immanence, and it's like going deep down, not being afraid to go into what I see as the soul, into to open to the shadow, so deep shadow work, really.
I can appreciate that. Yes.
And, just opened a whole realm I didn't even know existed. So there's a danger in psychology, you can be a bit up here, but depth psychology takes you into your depths, and it's more the realm of poetry in many ways, because of course the great poets, they speak from those places and they find a language that helps us drop down into those places. And so from there, what that did for my shiatsu was just incredible. How I related both on the mat and in dialogue with my clients, invited a getting behind, what are you really here for? Because my sense, although people will come with their various problems, they also have the notion of what they believe sorts their problems out. But actually, it's getting in touch with yourself in many ways. That it's not a sort of problem solving, it's more coming home to who you really are. And I think shiatsu can offer that. And if you hold the space where that's what you're there for, to hold a space for the person to come to know themselves at a deeper level, then it's a tremendous possibility for what shiatsu offers. It's a deep healing of the soul, the spirit, and the body.
May I say the shadow as well? Because when we're thinking about the journey that you just described, so someone comes with a perceived problem, let's say a physical symptom,
Yes,
and they also have an attitude towards that problem, like I need this in order to solve that problem.
absolutely, yeah,
And then when you manage to hold the space as a practitioner for the person to do their own healing,
yeah,
they discovered that in fact it was something more profound, more deep, and probably more rewarding, more generous. Like you've mentioned, going in all those journeys to
yes, yeah,
discover the depths of it and to find parts of you that maybe were not as familiar on a day-to-day
absolutely.
basis. I am very
Yeah,
inspired by this conversation, and I hear that shiatsu is all about connection, it's all about holding the space, it's all about facilitating
yeah,
individual healing in a context where you have, let's say, a safe container to just allow the person to do their own healing. How would we, or how would you rather describe shiatsu to someone who just comes to this practice? Let's say I've never heard about it before. I've seen a poster with a shiatsu treatment session option. What will happen there? How would you describe it to me?
ah, the question we all dread.
I'm trying to weave in different opinions
The
and
sort of what is shiatsu question is like the first honest answer might be I have no idea. I'm still trying to figure it out. Uh, of course, when kind of faced with that question, apart from taking a deep breath, um, there's it's all relative in the moment to who, of course, who is asking the question. So naturally, if I'm asked that question, I would sort of sense how do I pitch this? Now, of course, there's the practical aspect of, you need to let them at the very least know, well, it's a touch therapy and it involves a person lying on a futon and it's different from massage because they're fully clothed and it's more about pressure, um, includes pressure points and you may use your palms, your thumbs, your feet, indeed. And it could involve various stretching of the body and working with the body in a variety of different techniques. That's the kind of practical, it gives the person at least a picture in their head. And what on earth is this? Is it, I wasn't sure if it was a dog or a martial art, So, that obviously would be a starting point. Beyond that, in terms of relation, who I'm talking with, and where their interest is coming from, I trust that I would respond relationally to them in that moment. But I'd like to think that, what it's offering is touching them I'd be saying you and it touches you at a very deep level. it's a healing that, heals body, mind, and soul in a nutshell. And you could say a phrase like that might just initiate a conversation or further questioning. Yeah, that would be it in a nutshell, if I were to.
So it's a healing modality that looks after all layers of the being,
Yeah,
involves physical touch. That's incredibly interesting because it takes me back to what you've mentioned earlier. I come with a problem and I want you to fix it. Whereas in fact, Shiatsu is about something completely different and it offers a new perspective on things. And I keep coming back to the same word, connection.
yeah, absolutely.
Connection to self, to the practitioner and the receiver, and maybe to the field that is created in that environment. Um, you've had an incredibly vast career, and you've mentioned the moment when Shiatsu got sold to you, and you knew that it's going to be the path moving forward. I wonder whether throughout your career, and of course, we're keeping in mind the client confidentiality here, was there a significant moment, some unique moment that stayed with you forever, or some stories that have impacted you that you would be willing to share with us?
No, sure. What comes to mind is something that if you could see as a good learning moment for me, because that's what tends to stay rather than all the wonderful effects and all
Yeah.
the people help. That's kind of part of your work. But I think what stays with me is the ones that I learned from. And one comes to mind. It's quite a funny story, and it speaks something about my own sort of, if you like, hubris or slight arrogance. Um,
The shadow part.
I had a client come to me, highly recommended, and she had a shoulder problem. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, piece of cake, we'll soon have that sorted, sort of attitude. And so we worked, I gave her a shiatsu, which included, of course, working locally on the shoulder as well as the whole picture, sort of seeing it related to a bigger thing than just a local phenomena. And, she loved the shiatsu and we talked a little bit and she went away and she came back a fortnight later. She said, oh, I enjoyed the shiatsu, but my shoulder's no better. And I'm thinking, it's a surprise, one expects some, even if it's a small improvement to have happened after a shiatsu. So I said, okay, well, it's obviously a bit stuck. Let's do some deeper work. And I did. And she comes back another fortnight later and it's still no better. Now, the thing is, this goes on for several months. But during that time, we are talking a lot. And she is, well, it's not so much we're talking a lot, but more that she is bringing more of her life story to the session. So she's revealing more of her inner struggles and her very personal life challenges. So, we give a little time to talking, but then we get to the mat. So in the sharing of what is she's struggling with, when she comes to the shiatsu, that's being met through touch. So there is the healing for her life, if you like. And then she came, this went on, as I say, several months, and still the shoulder isn't getting better. We're going deeper and deeper and deeper into her life. And so she's receiving a tremendous healing for her whole life. If you could say this is soul work, And then she comes back one time and she said, after our last shiatsu, the shoulder went just like that. There was no even a hint. And then she said to me, if my shoulder had got better after the first 1 or 2 sessions, I wouldn't have carried on coming to you. And then I wouldn't have got the benefit of everything that we had done. I realized I wasn't really coming to you for my shoulder.
So it was not about the shoulder at all.
So it kind of really helped to see we're not here to fix shoulders. we're here to meet people where they are in their lives and to support them in what they really want. And we don't know what that is. And of course, she didn't know that either, but there's a body wisdom there that says, hey, I'm not letting go until you have dropped a bit deeper in yourself.
I'm going to say
That
this
was a
playfully.
wonderful learning for me.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I'm going to say this playfully, but I think the shoulder knew better than anyone else.
Shoulder knew better than anyone else, absolutely.
It's not going to go away after one session.
Body wisdom, isn't it?
Yes, I'm very glad that you've mentioned that because I truly believe that there's a higher intelligence at play here. Yes, the mind is wonderful. It's
Yeah.
here to keep us safe. It provides a lot of information. It helps us process things, but there's also the heart and the soul, as you've mentioned it. There's also the body, and all of them interconnected. They provide that guidance that probably all of us need in one way or another, regardless of the system of belief or practices that we choose for ourselves. This sounds like a very significant moment with the client, a very positive moment. Is there anything on the other side of the spectrum that you would like to share with us, like some of the difficult moments that you've experienced, and
Yeah.
probably more importantly, how did you overcome them?
Um, yes. So another one comes to mind that this was very early on in my career. So I probably had only been practicing 1 or 2 years. But I'd had enough experience to feel confident generally in my capacity to help people. Now, of course, in the early days, you tend, or I did tend to sort of see that my work was more about helping people with physical problems and, you know, um, and so it's common for people to come with things like back trouble. That was very common, you know. So I had this woman come to me who was in a real acute phase of a back trouble, and you know, she couldn't stand up properly, and she was in a lot of pain. So she comes in, and I can see she's, oh my God, she's in a lot of pain, you know, and she could hardly sit down, or she did, she couldn't for long. And so I'm thinking, oh God, we need to get her to the mat really quickly. And but I'm still in the sense of confidence in my capacity, you know, because I'd had sufficient experience to feel that. Now the thing is, though, when she came to the mat and I started to work, she couldn't sit still. I'm sorry, she couldn't stay still. You know, so any one position, I couldn't work for very long with her in any one position. So, you know, it's very easy if someone lies in prone position on their front, you can spend 20 minutes on their back. Great, we did a great treatment. Let's turn them over and, you know, sort of typical shiatsu work. But there's no way she was going to stay still. So I'm having to work with her in constant movement. And I'm thinking, oh my God, there's not enough stillness for me to get stuck in there. And so, you know, it gave her full treatment. But by the end of it, I was feeling very lacking in confidence and sort of feeling a bit de-skilled and really judging myself. God, I haven't done a good job here. I felt so bad that the thought occurred. Of course, I didn't apply it, but the thought occurred to suggest I don't charge her for the session, which wouldn't have been great, you know. Um, so I don't even know if I had noticed any change in her. So the only way I could get around it was saying, you give myself a second charge. This was on a Tuesday, and I was already going to be working on the Thursday. And so I said to her, I think it would be great if you came back. And I'm thinking, oh God, I've got to have another go at this and hope I can help. Anyway, she came back on the Thursday. She was a whole lot better. So I was a bit shocked because I thought I hadn't done anything. You know, I hadn't given a good enough shiatsu, but she said by that evening I was so much better. And so that was a teacher for me for two things. One is the power of shiatsu anyway, that touch. But the other thing that showed me is it's okay to work with someone as they're moving.
Welcome the field and see what it brings to surface.
Absolutely.
I hear
It
him.
doesn't have to look one way. They don't have to look in pro and now do my work with them. Now, this stood me in good stead when I later on work with children, because they don't stay still. So when you're working with especially little children, they're going to move all over the place. And it wasn't a problem then because I'd kind of learned that. So it was a real good teacher for me. And, you get a little child, that's going to crawl around and, it's easy to just have some toys there and let them play. And you're working on them while they're playing. Yeah.
No, that's so wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that with me. When I heard you mentioning the lessons that you had, there were several other things that came to my mind. On one hand, you were being hard on yourself
Yes.
for not having
Very hard on
delivered
us.
what your mind told you that you should have delivered, when in fact Shiatsu
Yeah.
was doing the work.
The
Anyways,
Shiatsu is doing the work. It's
yeah.
beyond what I thought it should look like. I mean, that's the magic of it, really.
No, and it's also very interesting to see how we end up in situations that become our biggest lessons, our biggest teachers, and then later on in life we discover that, hang on a minute, that was the foundation for something completely different. In your case, working with children later on and allowing yourself to be open enough to, let's say, change the approach, not necessarily the practice itself, because
Absolutely.
we want to have
Yeah.
the foundations and the origins in place, but to allow
Yeah.
yourself to experiment
Yeah.
while
It's
remaining there.
absolutely, it's flexibility, isn't it? It's being
Exactly.
flexible to what the situation demands.
No,
Yeah.
that's incredibly wonderful. How do you believe? And I'm sure that the Shiatsu community is already grateful and aware of everything that you've contributed with. But how do you personally believe that you've contributed to the practice of Shiatsu within the UK and beyond?
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, mainly, I suppose, initially through my shiatsu school the Bristol School of Shiatsu that I set up in 1984,
Five.
85, five, that's right.
I have
Yes.
it written down.
Yeah, yeah, good. I wrote it down. Yeah, yeah. So yes, I offered my first sort of 1 year course in 1985. Um, it was a good time because there are other people were setting up courses as well. I think the Sonia Marisa was already running, and the British School, I think, the year before, and my friend Oliver and I, he set up the Devon School at the same time. Um, so yeah, I mean, of course, this school is still going, though I'm no longer the pandemic changed it for me. I'm no longer the principal, but I wonderfully still teach in it, and it's a joy for me to be able to teach still with the school. Um, and it was important to me that I developed my work beyond the sort of 3 year training. So I've been doing postgraduate trainings for many years now. And that's wonderful because if you work with people that are already practitioners, you can evolve it. You're not worrying about syllabuses. You're not worrying about um, exams and all of that. It's like you can really go for it. Um, and I suppose, in the Bristol School and through my work, we have developed, you might call a certain style, which we call relational shiatsu. Previously, I kind of called it transformational shiatsu, but you could say all shiatsu is transformational. I don't want to kind of overly claim a right to that, but relational shiatsu is quite descriptive, and you could say yes, all shiatsu is relational too. Of course it is. But it's bringing more attention to the relational aspect and to stop oneself sort of just seeing how can I say, it's not just about I've got to be this really good person that is then good for the shiatsu, and I've got to be all together and grounded and at peace and all of that. No, you don't. You just have to be really you and present to what is here because that's in the field. So it's like you could be, You could come to a shiatsu and you could be feeling okay. You're in the middle of the shiatsu and suddenly all this anger arises in you because it's part of the field. Could it be that the person you're working with who's declaring, I've got migraine and I'm feeling stuck in my life and I've got arthritis, all their anger is sort of locked within their body, and in the openness of the shiatsu, it comes into the field, and then you start to pick it up and feel it, and then you're suddenly now feeling a bit of anger, but you don't have to say it's my anger, it's there, it's just anger is in the field. Wow, we can work with that. But you have to be sufficiently open to allow what's coming and not kind of push your emotions back, because it's like there's a life force in every emotion. And to stay very present to it, it's going to evoke different ways of working with them. If anger's alive in you, you're going to work in a very different way than if sadness is present. Sadness kind of invites a stillness, where anger is going to invite a little bit more movement and activity. So, and kind of seeing that it's not you doing the shiatsu. The shiatsu is what happens between these two people.
So the practitioner becomes the observer of the field and he holds the space.
Yes, both the observer and the embodied presence within it. There has to be what I would see an allowing of a vulnerability, because essentially it's an intimate thing, shiatsu. And so we have to be intimate with our own feelings and not, hey, I'm a good shiatsu practitioner, I can do great stuff to you. It's like we have to be very vulnerable to what's arising within us, but recognize it's not just within us, it's within a field that you are both within. Mm-hmm. And that's what allows a connection. I'm not here to be a great expert. I'm here to be honestly present, relationally present. Mm-hmm. Vulnerably who I am in this moment that's unfolding, vulnerably with you.
Like you've mentioned earlier, being human and being alive.
Absolutely. And that's challenging, because we may want to fall back into our safe modes. But I think shiatsu is going to invite us to go beyond our safety, not play safely. I mean, holds safety as the basis of the relationship, but from your own point of view, move beyond your safe boundaries, as it were, and listen to what's being invited within the field.
I would think that the experience that you have from psychology and all the chances that you had to integrate your shadow self helped you do this even better, right? Because once we discover something from the shadow and it comes present in the field with the client, between the client and the practitioner, then it's
that's beautifully put. Absolutely.
Healing happens to me right now as well. So I just want to appreciate the wisdom that you're sharing with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like the shadow's there. It's going to emerge, and because of the power of shiatsu, going to emerge. And there's a deep life force within us which we would want to be in touch with. That's our aliveness. If we'd, let's say, had a lifetime of repressing anger, we didn't just repress the emotion, we repressed all the life force with it, then that we don't have that now when we need it. So it's less about the emotions, and it's more about the life force that's on it, that tempers us, if you like.
Yeah. Because anger can be seen as something destructive, but at the same time, something that fuels change and transformation. That's incredibly interesting. You've given me so much food for thought, and I cannot wait to reflect and listen to this conversation once again. One, I would like to appreciate all the contribution that you've done within the Shiatsu community in the UK throughout almost 5 decades. So I would like to mirror that back to you. And I'm wondering, what are your hopes for Shiatsu in the next few years? How are things changing? What would you like to happen?
Oh, my hopes for shiatsu. Um, I guess I sort of see shiatsu, it's a kind of two threads or strands to it. One is at a grassroots level. The lovely thing, the beauty of shiatsu is you can learn a little bit and already do some good with it. Do you know what I mean? That
Mhm,
I used to run so many introductory and classes, and some of those would go on to do the training, but a lot of people wouldn't.
mhm,
That's okay.
mhm,
They may be doing it with friends and family.
mhm,
How lovely. The shiatsu could spread sort of at the level of, oh, you've got a neck problem. Oh, let me hold your neck for a bit. I learned a
mhm,
little bit.
mhm,
And I love that idea that it could be part of society. And probably in Japan, that's what it was traditionally like. I'm guessing that
mhm,
some family members may have known a bit of shiatsu and just supported each other. So that's one aspect. I love the idea that shiatsu could be part of everyone's life in a sense, just at that grassroots level. And I
mhm,
think you could say, we have maybe even a duty to work at that level. So you're not only seeing it's about professional practitioners.
mhm,
Um, but coming to the other thread, which is the professional, um, there are a lot of good schools around offering shiatsu throughout the world, which is so
mhm,
wonderful. It is a bit sad that that the schools are not maybe as flourishing as they were back in the 90s. There was a very rich time in the 90s. There were a lot more schools than they were. Um, yeah, so there's a kind of reduction. I don't quite know why. I mean, of course, there are so many different therapies on offer, which could be part of that picture. Um, So in the way for the direction for shiatsu to go in, how would I like to see it? Um, I guess in my own heart is the work that I'm kind of doing. I'd like to see that consciousness in shiatsu. So there's a real honoring and humbling of um, the relational aspect. Now, I think most practitioners intuitively kind of know that. And so there is a sense in which that's happening naturally. But I would encourage it further, so a further deep dive into the shadow aspect. Um, um, and I guess that's, how can I say? I think there's a danger when we are looking at personal development to see it just as, oh, I'm working on myself to improve myself, so I'm a better version of me.
fix myself.
Yeah, it can start to look like that. And when I've done a lot of that, then I'll be a better person. And I think it's more like, how can I show up vulnerably me with all of me? And that's less about, once I've done all these practices and had enough
Mhm,
therapy and all of that, then I'm now sorted, as it were.
mhm. I show
Um,
up as I am.
yeah, absolutely. And how do we kind of recognize that the power in shiatsu is less about, you know, where to hold, which meridian needs working with, what points do I need? That's all part of the picture, the understanding, the theory, and the meridians and the so-called diagnosis. There's a danger in thinking I've got to find the right diagnosis. it's all relative. What is the right diagnosis? You go to several practitioners, they might come up with different ones because you're meeting a different part of you.
Mhm.
So it's very much how do we take a risk to be present with all of us? And so I guess I'd like to see an encouragement of that. What I might term I use that is embodied relational presence is a kind of term I've coined for myself. Um, yeah,
So it's
I don't know if
yeah,
I've communicated it well enough, but
you have. What reached me is the fact that the power of shiatsu is less about recipes and
yeah,
prescriptions. And you've
yeah,
also mentioned the word diagnosis because it's part of the practice. And it's more about embodied presence and
yeah,
embodied relational presence, where we work with the person we're interacting with the field, also with parts of ourselves that may show up in the moment, whether that's the shadow that surfaces or the light or any other aspect. I really appreciate this, and it gave me a lot of food for thought, and I am certain that our community will value so much everything that you've shared with us. I do have a final question, and I would invite you to think maybe at the first few steps of your shiatsu journey as a practitioner, shiatsu career rather than a student, what would you tell someone that is just starting on this journey? You can think about two, three things that you would like them to know, or maybe your younger self wished to know. That would be that would be wonderful.
what do I say? Ah, I would speak with such love and enthusiasm, and I would say, wow, you're just about to enter something so wonderful. And I'd invite you to give yourself so fully to it. And, at the base of it all, the journey into shiatsu is a journey into love. And that to me is the source of shiatsu, that when you're giving shiatsu, it's a way of you to express the essence of who you are as a loving human being to another soul. And, we all want to give our love. And, here's a tremendous opportunity. I'd say dive in fully, go with it the whole way. This is an incredible invitation, and I'm very excited for you.
Dive in fully. I hear that. Dive in fully. The journey of shiatsu is the journey into love. I made notes and I just wanted to reflect this back with you. It's been an incredibly healing conversation for me personally. So I'm very happy that I had the chance to
Yeah.
get to know you a little bit better. And I really appreciate sharing your time, your energy, your resources, and your wisdom with us. In case there's anything you feel the need to share with me or with the community, please by all means do that. Um, and if not, we invite you to leave any type of questions, any feedback, and anything that you would like to share with us on the YouTube channel on the comment section.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's been an absolute delight sharing this time uh, with you. And don't have anything else to add. Um, I guess what's coming to me. I'm just sort of tuning into what am I with. I think I'm with gratitude right now. I'm with gratitude of all the wonderful teachers I've had, but also gratitude for my colleagues.
Mhm.
I feel, we have been a part of something amazing. And although I may not have much contact with my peers, as it were, I mean, some I do. They still, all of them are in my heart, and I really treasure. Um, and I feel they're alongside. We're all in it together, doing something amazing. So, I'm aware of different people around running the schools, and we get busy, and we may not have much contact. But wow, together, something great has been happening, in the shiatsu world. And I do feel part of that fraternity. And there's a deep love in that, as well as gratitude. And, I bow to all those people that both who have gone before and who are still doing the work and I'm sharing this with. There's a deep love for all of those people. I can name many, but they've written the books, they've run the schools, they're doing postgrad work, and I love them all.
It is indeed a wonderful community to be part of. And even though I'm not a shiatsu practitioner myself, I do feel the energy, the love, and the wisdom of the practice itself. So much gratitude for me as well. Thank you very much for sharing the space with us. And thanks to all of you that are watching the recording. Please do keep in touch and share this with as many people as possible, bringing my marketing hat on to provide something to take action on. And we'll see you again in the next episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonio.